I think she's okay.
She's okay.
Did you help? You help.
Yeah.
Weeding.
No?
She was having a hard time, but I didn't
Yeah, I
offer.
think-
I just like
Oh.
hit her back a little bit and
This gets caught there, you can't.
yeah.
So we're streaming, but let's, how do we wait till?
That one
Well,
poked
we
me
can
a
call the
little bit.
meeting to order and we're not making any decisions. So we'll reconvene the City of Cottonwood Heights the work session this night of April 16th. And if you look at the agenda, we're still talking about the proposed budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. A couple more items for discussion. Sally will join us in a second. There's some things that are not included in the budget that, well, first thing I want to note two things. One is the 30th East overlay, the $162,000. That's, to me, a critical thing, and it's unique in that it's a street that's partly owned by Holiday and partly owned by us, and the fact that we've tried for years to get that redone because it's one of the most traveled streets entering our city, so I think that's a plus. I'm glad to see it on there.
That's not in here, it
It
is.
is, it is. I just want to note
It
that.
is.
The other thing of interest is that we have the $200,000 for the Ferguson Canyon outfall. Is that the $200,000 from the Canyon Center project, that money, or this is our part of
A
it?
carryover on the budget, I think.
No,
isn't
this
it?
carryover?
is a project that was funded for this year, but they're not gonna get to it and get it done this year, and so they're just carrying it forward to the next year.
Okay, but that's.
I don't think it has to do with the Canyon Center, but
Nothing to do
I'm
with
not
it?
100% sure.
Okay, let's do it.
You're just saying that's money from our budget that we're,
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And I think it's also important to note that we've also budgeted the 100, I don't know where it's at, I looked at it a minute ago. The match for the park and ride. That's
Yes.
out in Ferguson.
That
Which we've always
is
wondered last year,
near
where is
the-
that? What is it?
That is near the bottom,
It's-
125,000.
It's right.
Okay.
And that's in the budget.
Yeah.
Yes,
In
that
the,
is,
currently in the proposal.
So it's in
Yes.
the budget, which I think is really a good point, but it's, otherwise it would be some restricted something, but we have a responsibility there, so the fact it's in the budget, I think is,
yeah. And
I note that.
that way, if it's delayed or anything, the money's reserved,
yeah.
so.
Applaud you for getting those things in there and then documenting it so that we have it. Tyler, we just talked about 30th East, which is in your district, which it's a road that's, we own half of it. Holiday owns the other half, and it's not north and south. It's running north and south. We own the east side, they own the west side, which is kind of interesting. And so that's done, and also the Ferguson Canyon outfall, which to carry over. And then the money that is for that park and ride, that we have extension of, if that'll be developed or not with the county. I think that's important to note. The next thing for me, and my questions, is the bottom of the page is not numbered, but
Sorry.
contingency items and question items that are not in the budget that we need to talk about. Everything from stormwater projects to a stormwater fee to solar at City Hall, charging stations, rain barrel, East Jordan Canal, trail acquisition funding, Utopia, general plan, dog park, those things. A lot here is questions. I don't know if we've really talked about them. As a group, we haven't.
Yeah, so these are all not, they're not in the budget, with the
Right.
exception of, well, trail acquisition funding is in the budget, but what we do with the 1.4 million of CDRA.
It's just documented that's here.
Yeah, so these are just items that are not in the budget. They're not being recommended at this time, but they're here so you understand. We discussed these at the committee, and if there's some things that you feel need to be added in the budget, I can give you input as far as thought processes on some of these, but that's
Well, I have a couple, but they're pages before that.
Oh, okay, let me just throw out one here that I have, that way we can come back. Is, we talked about this previously, but do we have a grant for the East Jordan Canal?
Yeah, so,
Right.
so we have a grant for that, but we have to match that of 25,000. We
Right.
talked about that last, or 2 weeks ago. So we have not appropriated funds for that. We talked about it, and I feel that there were still some questions on what we wanted to do as far as proceed. We wanted to get input from the residents before we proceeded with that. And so that's kind of hanging out there right now.
My interpretation was, from what I felt of it, and people can change now and correct me, is that the support, the putting in the budget, so it's there, subject to meeting with the residents in that area. So I would propose that that be added, because we have a, what,
I would-
$175,000 grant. If you look at the map, it comes right off Fort Union, goes right around and connects to Mountain View Park. It eventually could go further at some point in time, but if we don't take the opportunity, it's lost. But
Okay.
that was my feeling that was discussed in our last meeting.
Okay.
And remind me how we got the other 175 or what
It was a grant
Yeah.
from the state. I
Two,
think.
actually.
when did we do
Yeah.
that?
We did that 3 years ago, I believe.
One's been hanging out a long time, I know.
It's been out there.
Then did the state outdoor recreation grant, what's it named, Tom Adams, is a piece of it as well, I think?
I am not gonna recall the two pieces.
But there are grants that have been, that we obtained a while ago.
And one grant helps meet the match for the other.
Yeah.
And our ultimate share of the whole bit was 25.
Yep.
So it's $200,000 of grant plus $25,000 of our expenses, so it's to
225.
And you're right, it is two different
Yeah.
grants. Yeah, we talked about that at the last
I
meeting.
mean, at least, for the tentative budget, I would say, yeah, let's definitely put it in and see how it goes. We can,
I know the question was liability one, but that part of the canal is covered, I think. But if you look at access from the commercial development of Target right there to Light, you enter onto the trail, it takes you around without having to go up the street, it takes you right around to the north end of the park. It seems logical to me.
you can make your way all the way to Highland through that.
Eventually someday, but it's a start, and I use the analogy of Jordan River Parkway once again, is you start getting little pieces, and eventually someday when we're gone, you start connecting those pieces, but if we don't, it's lost. And, 25,000 to spend, 225 is. But again, it's subject to going through a process with that neighborhood. I know several of them there, but I know historically they've been supportive, but unless it's changed.
I just expressed it 2 weeks ago, my experience with trails along the canal adjacent people's backyards, and you usually get differing opinions about
Yeah.
that, so.
So just remind them about the lack of canal water that's out going
Right.
into their basements, because that was a huge issue for
Oh,
a
yeah.
long time.
But
I can
again,
imagine.
I agree, I just would want to make a decision subject to passage of
Yeah,
principle and
yep.
give those
Talk to
residents
them.
an opportunity to.
These probably will still get
decide
different.
about it.
Yep.
So, Tim, could I trouble you to ask Mike Johnson if he's gonna be at our partial buildings meeting?
I think he
Is he
will.
gonna bring, if he can bring this up with maps and everything?
Sure.
Sure.
He's back in town 9, so he should be there tomorrow.
That was the one on that last list that I was,
The only other question I have, and then I need to shut up, is I noticed historically we've talked about reviewing our fee schedule. I've not seen anything in our budget process. I know if we're going to change anything by law, it has to be part of our budget, doesn't it? So
If
if
we
we're
want to
making any
change-
changes with our fees anywhere?
At this time, I don't think any proposals to change fees had come up by any of the department people. So-
The one that you're gonna see in a couple of weeks is our building
Okay.
facility.
Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't have to be brought up specifically with the budgeting process. It can be done at any time
Yeah.
through a
There's a
normal
process.
city council meeting.
Yeah.
And so you can do that, in November if you want or whatever. So.
Our fee schedule is part of the budget, right?
That's right.
We will add the fee schedule in with the budget. If we don't change the fee schedule, we won't necessarily bring it up as part of the budget to get it, if you will, approved, because it's already approved and it stays that way.
If you change the fee schedule, then you'd be a budget amendment, be part of the budget amendment?
No.
No, it would just be to change the fee schedule. It may have, if it has a budgetary impact, let's say we were gonna really increase a fee or really decrease a fee, then we would bring that to your attention. But usually they're not gonna have a major impact on the budget.
All right, thank you. Okay, Scott, you had some questions that you wanted to?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that were brought in. One that were of concern. One was the float. I think the amount on there actually is probably 10,000. That's typically where it's been historically. For the tentative, I'd like to see put back in there. Just from a, without it kind of really makes a really significant impact of other days in the parade. If we're not sending our float other places, then we don't get them there. It would really make a significant impact there, and I think that's, I think it's something that people see and have some civic pride in. The one that's right next to that is the changing the newsletter to a quarterly system, which I think even our last the last survey we did, we still had a significant majority, close to 60%, where people were saying that that was their primary source of information from the city. And so although I understand it is a lot of work, with it being that many people that still get that as their source of information, it seems like that could be going backwards to go to quarterly. So I'd like to see those two, at least in the tentative budget, put back in so that we can at least take some public input on it. I'll look to see if there's a third one, but.
How hard would it be to get updated public input?
Another survey? I don't know if it's that hard. What was,
Well, it was I believe it was a Dan Jones.
No, it's
the Y2K. How much was the first
Y2K?
I'm sorry, I'm mixing another.
It was about 12 grand to do another.
I think about, I thought it was 20.
Shame on you.
I thought it was 20.
Well, we did John Jones before.
Yeah, well, it's been long enough that they need to get a new pot of people and then do some questions. So the first one's like 20 and you can do subsequent ones for quite a bit cheaper.
Yeah, that's what it was.
If we wanted to do that, we would need to run the budget.
Well,
That's not a bad idea.
to do another
Study
study.
some surveys, but,
What was that, 2016?
It was
I mean, it was
2015 and 2016.
about 2 years ago that we did that last.
Yeah, so it's 2016, and yeah, I read the survey even recently, and that was the #1 way that people receive information from the city. So, yeah, that's a fact. What this proposal is, and if we want to continue it the way it is, that's fine. I'm comfortable with that. I don't have any issues with that. This was just a way to look at it. I benchmarked a couple of other communities that were doing kind of a weekly update and then a quarterly newsletter. That's where this came from. So,
Via email or something?
yeah, well, it was sent out via email, but also posted. I think it's mainly posted on the website, and people referenced it, and then the quarterly newsletter. So that's where this proposal came from. If we want to continue it the way it is, that's fine. We can do that. But there
I
would be a
guess-
budget savings, so.
If we're gonna keep it the way it is, I think the way it is in quotes, right? Keep it looking at the way it will evolve.
Right. But as far as the distribution, keep it,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about, is the
The timing
distribution.
as far as monthly.
Yeah.
But I think that's a valid point, is always evaluating if there's ways to keep it more current, up to date. Maybe the content, sometimes there's a question if we want to go a different direction in content.
Yep.
If we wanted to transition that, then maybe having a thing, we're looking at having a weekly updates via email and start collecting a lot of email addresses, making that listserv. I think with our demographic, there are a lot of people who that's, again, that's what they're expecting, that's where they're expecting to get the information on the city.
Do you think people get their information from our newsletter on what's happening, or do you think they get it from the newspaper in terms of like issues and
Again, we had
developments?
60 and 60+% saying that their newsletter was their primary source of getting information on the city. That's where they went to look to find out what was going on.
Councilmember Michael, if I may, I have an editorial meeting with the newspaper every month to make sure that we don't that we do different things. So we actually get together and we either share and/or move a different direction so that we don't overreach on certain things. And we have a pretty good relationship with them that way.
I think one of the other things that we talked about in our meeting, our committee meeting, was whether we do an opt-out for the newsletter too, where you could get an electronic version of the newsletter, and then those who like the hard copy can, and maybe that's a transition we could look at and see if that has a high adoption rate.
I mean, yeah, if we want to do a transition, I think, do they let you do exclusion?
If I may, no, we currently, the way it's delivered is done by postal routes, so we don't choose our addresses. We have to, there is an opt-out, but they have to do it. It's a hard process. They have to do it. The Twila does. So it's there. And we do offer the online subscription through the email already. Just not very many people use it.
So Scott, what you're proposing is
At
one.
least in the tentative budget.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, just in the tentative budget, to leave that in with an understanding that we'll review.
I would say change it back to the way it's been, the monthly.
Yeah, but as Christina's mentioning, is that with an understanding, we're gonna review and evaluate the effectiveness, the content, and the other optics that we feel we wanna look at it.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
Yeah,
That
you
was one
talked
of our
about
work.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all it is.
This is just distribution
Yeah.
related, but
Okay.
we'll look at all that.
I think if you went straight to a quarterly thing, you'd get a lot of people who would be, how come you're not telling
It's
me?
also problematic for scheduled events that we do. that we
Well, the
promote.
point being is we're talking right now just in the tentative budget, we'll have a chance if people think more. I'm fine leaving the tentative for the next one, and then we can talk about more.
And again, I would do the same on the float, just because.
But you would
that's
do
what-
the float at,
I think it's, if we want to be generous, 12.
so if it was at 12, with the understanding that, well, and I hear what you're saying, being involved, a little biased, is that I understand if, the only reason we get floats from any other cities in our parade is if we share ours, otherwise they won't come.
I mean, what's the goal of the parade? Are we interested in seeing other cities' floats, or would we want to encourage more people from our city to have their own floats? I know they don't. Is the fee structure that stops it? I mean, I don't know. I guess I've
Well,
been
you
to a
can
lot
have
of.
a parade without floats.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
I've been to other parades, 4th of July parade in Steamboat, or, we've all been to different ones. They all.
Brighton used to have one of the greatest parades in the world, and we have no floats.
Right, yeah.
It was fantastic. But I think giving the committee an opportunity to evaluate that, I guess. But I like just the discussion today is on the material and the parameters and how the float is constructed and the message that it's giving. I think that's, so I'm fine for the quality of life experience of having thousands of people line up and to have that day and all that stuff. I'm good with that. But I think giving some parameters as to what type of float, what message, the makeup, I'd love to have further discussion about that. But I'm a Parks and Rec guy, and this kind of fits into that quality of life area that I think there's value, but not just kind of free flowing of what the message is. So I appreciate the message this year on honoring our veterans. I think that's great. And the comments as far as what the material is. I love the idea of putting something on the back that talks about.
I think that's a very visible, awesome way to do that.
That's a
So,
value added.
I guess I'd like to see that moving forward. Well, if we have more than a few months now to affect some of those changes, at least for the tentative budget, I think we should put a mark in there for next year's. I'd rather take it away afterwards than having everybody going, why are you taking this from me, and then asking questions for months. Why did you cancel Butlerville days? from the one, which is what happened last year.
This is a far cry from canceling Butlerville days, if we're just talking about
But-
our float. I mean, I think $17,000 for a float, if we
Is the
didn't
wrong
have
number.
17, well, what, even if it's 10 or 12, times 10, that's $120,000. And we could put that into an electric charging station or half of the value of solar on our roof. I think when you have limited funds, we have to really be thoughtful of how we use those. And I love Butlerville Days. I've been a participant for years since I've lived here, and I love it. But just if we got rid of the float, I'm not sure that it changes the whole, I don't know, maybe it does change the whole parade, but maybe that's not a terrible thing. Maybe there's ways we can evolve, like the mayor said, that the Brighton parade used to be the great thing, it didn't have parades, it didn't have floats. I mean, it just seems like a lot of money to me. I don't know.
I'd find leaving it in for another month, and then we come back and with some hot, I guess, we call them wicked items or something, where you just want to come back and say, okay, these things are still in flux, let's think about it, both with that and that 12,000, and we can talk some more. I mean, I want to respect everyone's wishes a little bit. So,
We need direction on what, right now it's not in.
I would support Scott in leaving it in at 12,126, but with an understanding it's in the tentative budget, and that it will be addressed again before we do the final
And
budget.
I think that Scott and I and our committee took it out,
Mike.
or Mike and I.
Yeah. Well,
That's
Then if
yeah,
there's
I mean,
three people on
that's a
that
very
side.
big bang for the buck.
yeah, I mean,
How much do we spend on Butlerville's days as it is? 180?
The
Total,
total, no, 100,
yeah.
the total is about 110-ish, but there is a good portion of it that comes from the fees. I think the city's contribution is about 60.
yeah,
Scott, do you have that?
Oh, I didn't have that.
Because of Carnival contributes a bunch of donations and sponsors. Yeah.
Scott, if I recall, this 17,000 is the expense item related to what we contribute with the float and also other aspects.
It
The
is-
remaining is revenues that come in, am I correct in that? Revenues that come in
So-
from sponsors and from the,
One year it was 17,000. The typical year, it's 10 to 12,000.
Right,
It
that's
ranges in that range for the float specifically. So that one, if the reduction is left in, we would reduce it down to that amount, rather than 17,000. I'm trying to find, and I don't think it's outlined good here
That's
in the budget, so that I can grab it really quick, but I believe that the cost of Butlerville Days was in the $65,000 or so range, once you net the revenues against that. But quite literally, I'm gonna need to ask Ann.
And then
I-
10 of that would be the float.
The float is actually separate from
Yeah, that's
Butlerville Days.
separate.
So 75,000.
Yeah. So, well, there's some other costs associated with the parade, so I think the total, so there's a float and then there's the parade costs. So the total cost of the float and the parade is closer to like maybe 17,000, maybe 19,000.
The parade part would be, a lot of
Because
those come out of the.
specifically event parade is in the budget, it's 19,500.
And that includes all the extra
Mhm.
overtime for police, because I remember we went over all of this in great detail last year.
Public Works too.
Yeah, so I don't remember I don't know all the aspects of that, but yeah.
Well, now we're moving to Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday with Butlerville Days and
Competing with other
which will help
parades, I
with.
think, right?
but I don't think we are competing this
Not
year.
this year.
With other, not this year, but when it's on.
Yeah, I think in other years we have.
What? I didn't hear the question.
Competing with other parades.
No, when we had it on the 24th, we'll avoid that mostly, having moved it to the 4th weekend of July. So occasionally you might hit the 24th being on a Saturday or something like that, but,
Well,
once
this
every
is one of
7 years,
those, these are a couple things that are going to be decided. I know Councilman Shelton needs to be here. I know he has a position already. I don't know if we can hold him to that, not here, but I'd support leaving it in a tentative, and then we're going to review it one more time, or two more times. But
You know, that at least give me a shot to review with the Butler Village Committee. If I'm misrepresenting what I think they would think, then, you know, that's fine. I can live with it.
I don't think that just because we're saying we don't want to spend $10,000 or $12,000 for a float means we don't support the parade, so I just want to be clear.
Absolutely.
Well, I
with
guess that
that.
depends on how you're hearing it, because.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and I'm trying to clarify to you. And if you could, it would be wonderful if it came up, that you would share that.
That's fair, but again, I think one of the things that's always been nice is we've had a number of those there. And it makes the parade a little more fun.
Yeah, the first year we didn't have a float,
So,
it was more of a Brighton Highland type, not Brighton skews area around the circle. This is more of a community base, so it's worth the discussion, but I know the committee and hundreds and hundreds of hours have been into it. I know it means a lot, so I'd like to further the discussion, give them a chance to look at it strictly from a tentative basis. Talia, I'd be curious to hear your position, and then we can decide to.
I'd be interested to know if those other floats would still come to our city if we didn't have a full float to theirs.
I asked Anna, and she said that would be a very hard.
I think we could even ask in the next month. That's why I put it.
It's usually a quick pro kind of if you come to mind. In fact, there was a couple of years because we were conflicting with the 24th and people were having a hard time coming, that the mayor said, you know, we came and we did yours and then you're not showing up here. If you want to do it again, you need to, and he held another of the mayors quite poignantly to, we showed up, you show up. That's the way it works, or, you know, we're not going to. Because it's quite a bit for us to get out to Harriman or to River or those parades, but like I said, they like it. I think people like it.
If we have a market study, we could ask, or do another study, Y2K.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did surveys come up on our list of goals anywhere?
No, not for that.
Well, no, I meant just generally. Because that's nothing that's covered anywhere in the budget, is any money for any kind of survey or.
Let's throw it on there, because we should do one, not this year, maybe the next.
Yeah.
Opinions change rapidly, and internet usage changes, and lives change.
Do you, if you want to do that, we can do that.
I think the
We've
way.
not done one under this council. I think when you get close to the end of 2 years, it would be a valuable piece of information. And I think we can design it to, it was not overly expensive if we kept it.
Well, and that's why I asked Dan. He said the first one to get, because they have to get a bunch of people to talk to, and that takes time and money to get it. That was about $20,000 for the first one, and then you could do subsequent ones that were easier, quicker for 6 or 7 apiece. But you have to keep your pool fresh.
Pretty sure it's been 3 years, by the way.
2016.
Yeah, it's been 3 years.
So, yeah, you
Okay.
want to include that in the budget? We'll research what the cost would be and then.
Just in the tentative, but again, we need to really walk through these one more time and see what the budget impact is. Because we've taken some things out, added some things in.
So just so I can be clear, so we're adding back in the 17,000 for the float?
No.
No, we're leaving it out.
Well, what Scott's proposed is they come back in at 12 tentatively,
Okay.
and we're gonna review it again before, and Scott's gonna talk to the committee, talk about other cities willing to participate. And then we will come back again and formally see how everyone feels and take a black and white position. The
Other one was the,
26,000 on the newsletter, with the same, it's not absolutely in, but we'll leave it into the tentative. We're adding in, I understand we're adding in the Jordan Canal for 25,000. We're taking out the.
Not much.
We're
I
upside
mean,
down.
but part of it is to see what the whole final
We're up by
numbers look at.
12,000.
It's, you know, it's tentative, and I think it's easier from a tentative standpoint, say this is it, and then maybe we put a couple of discussions items out there, and we ask for public comment on, what do you think about this, and this?
Well, you can, yeah, each of, for me now, hearing this discussion, I'd like to give it a more personal thought, and check with a few people as I do, and, you know. And then also, Tim's gonna report back to us on Gilson Engineering meeting.
I guess, going back to the float,
Yeah.
I would consider keeping the float, reducing the amount, and trying to work with the Boys and Girls Club or other organizations in our city to do more of a community-wide float, rather than sending money to somebody downtown to build it for us. If it's a community event, I think we should be bringing our community together to help us with our float. And I don't know if there's student groups in the summer that we could even, you know, make a donation to
Yeah.
XYZ daycare, whatever it is, Boys and Girls Club, like I said.
Yeah.
Have them do it for
I'll be
us.
the one that's done that before, yeah. I think that's part of the discussion.
Well, on that, you know,
Yeah. Or some type of a sponsorship, the other way, some group that comes in and wants to sponsor it that's philanthropic, I don't know.
I think that's what rubbed me the wrong way, is it's like a float that represents our city that we just paid somebody to build it, and I don't know, I've been in my own float, I've worked at a private school, we've built our float, and it really, really brought
Yeah, but,
good
yeah,
feelings. So I think, I
I
just.
think the
I
hardest
see
part there is the
disconnect.
organization and getting it done, so, but that's,
So I guess I just want to say it on record, it's the disconnect of emotion that I struggle with the most, not because I don't like the float or the parade or anything like that, so just.
No, but
getting back to the
these,
personal.
you know, and I go back to the initial comment as far as having the materials that it's made of, having some criteria there. I think that's kind of foundation more of that type of thinking. This goes.
and I like that idea going forward. Yeah. Even if you're known as, you're the guys who always put how recyclable what is on the back end of it. That would be a
But
great
if-
reputation.
But if we
to
had
have.
but if we had a citizens group who was partnering with us, that'd be win-win too. But we have to change some thinking over on the committee of how.
And that would definitely it'd have to go,
I'm trying to think of one off the top. Anyway, that's tentative, okay. There's several other items that Tim has asked to, and I guess through Christine and Mike's committee, that want to come to the full council for consideration.
Yeah, so these, just for your clarification, these are not, they're not built into the budget.
Right, clearly,
So
none of these are in the.
The last
The
page.
the last page just has items that the committee talked about.
On the bottom of that second to last page.
Yeah, right there.
And over
It's
here.
not in.
So they are not in, but they're there for your review. If we put those in,
don't have any
we have to fund them. So we have stormwater project, we have one stormwater project, but what this is stating is, do we want to implement a stormwater fee? And that's that process. That's not in this current budget.
Okay.
But if you want to do that, we feel like there's a need, but
And how would you?
Or a telecom.
How would you assess it, how would you collect it, and what would the fee be?
it would be a two-part process where we hire a professional to do the analysis for us, a fee analysis and also a need analysis as far as projects. And those two elements.
60 grand, at least.
No, it's,
I
I
can't remember.
think it was 50.
It's been a long time since we've
It's
formed our
around
stormwater facilities master plan.
And that's the big thing, is to have a master plan with it, so we're not just
Yeah.
randomly shooting money
Mhm.
different places, but to have a real plan to address the neediest things first on through.
It's the master plan and then the fee analysis.
And then evaluating how to build a fee. Councilman Shelton prefers actually a property tax-based approach to it.
Correct.
There's ways to be able to build a fee. If it's $4 a month, maybe you do it twice a year, because it's not a lot of money to try and bill. And if somebody got a $4 bill, that's gonna be kind of weird to pay for.
And we
So
have.
there's a lot of things to consider.
We have looked at some things preliminarily, but we want to know if you want to go in this direction before we dive into it. We've talked with Rocky Mountain, they could bill for us, there's other modes of billing. We could get those costs, but we haven't evaluated that until we know you want to pursue that or not.
You almost have to start pretty quick after July to get it all implemented and done and taken care of.
You
for the
could,
next
you could
budget.
potentially implement it mid-year and things too. You could say in like.
But it's
January
time-wise, get the
2020.
study done, have the public review, have
Yeah.
the, everything, argue about how much they decided, because they always come in, you could charge $25 or $40 a month,
Yeah.
and no one in the right mind implements.
So Councilmember Shelton is saying do it through property tax, which means truth in taxation.
Exactly.
So you couldn't do it. You'd have to do it.
If you chose to do it by a property tax basis, you have to wait until you can do a property tax change
But
in
you
order
don't
to
need the,
implement that.
you don't need the plan, and you don't need the other research, because you're not doing it for you, just.
Yeah.
Which if you wanted to do it property tax wise, we would recommend doing, it would have to be the next year. And so,
Yeah.
that's,
What- So for the first bulleted item, if we chose to go through the Rocky Mountain Power, some other recommendation, there would be a cost to run the analysis, and we would have to add that into the budget, because it's not there.
A cost to collect the fee.
No, a cost to analyze
Yeah.
the different
The
ways of
different
doing
projects.
so. or-
You have to have a
there-
stormwater fee
Yes.
study to justify.
Right, that's what I'm
it.
saying, so that
And
study
we-
would cost
we-
50,000, it's not in the budget.
It's not in the budget, but we do have some designated fees from impact fees that can be utilized for that. And so those are fees those are revenues or a part of fund balance that are designated that we have in fund balance that can only be utilized for certain things. And this is one of the acceptable things that we can utilize that for. On that, you have to have a capital facilities plan in order to utilize those fees, and designing a capital facilities plan is one of the things that you can do. And once you do that, then, capital facilities plan number A, that can then be utilized for that particular, capital project, if you will. But you have to have that defined in order to be able to utilize those fees, so.
so we have funding, and it's in capital, correct? In our capital fund.
It is.
That is designated, that we could do this
Part of
study
that
if we want.
800,000 that's. in fund balance.
It's actually outside of
Outside of
that.
that.
Yeah, there's, at the end of last budget year, there was about, I think it was 103,000, but don't quote me exactly on that. And it's building up this year again, but until we get a capital projects plan, we can't utilize that against
We did the roads, capital.
We have some of it is
We need to
road-based
do-
and some of it is stormwater-based, because we charge both a stormwater and a transportation fee. And we've got to have those in order to be able to
It's gotta be
utilize.
12 years since we did our stormwater capital facilities plan.
Yeah, and basically,
It's way out of date.
we've kind of gone through
We have
the
updated it.
effective use, and we need to update that now, and that's where we're kind of sitting with that, so.
So to
that-
clarify, those funds are outside of the funds we're talking about here.
Yes.
We could do those studies and have the funds to do those studies to implement this if you wanted to.
I think we should do
I
the
think we
stormwater
should.
capital facilities plan either way.
This is a can that's been kicked down the road too long.
I mean, the one we did, again, it's probably
I
been
agree.
updated a little bit, but it's been a long time since we've looked at it
Yeah,
holistically, and we should do that. Whether or not we choose to do a specific fee, we can argue about that in 6 months.
And part of your work objectives for 2019 that you identified was conduct a storm water capital facility study investigating implementation of a fee.
We got a lot of bricks put on that because we bought a van and a camera to find out where the stormwater actually went.
So
We didn't know.
you're saying
I heard about that.
you have the money that's outside what's showed here to do the study?
yeah, and the reason is because it's a restricted base, fund base, you can't utilize it for anything, and I'm showing you the unrestricted monies. And so at the end of last year, we had about 103,000, and to date this year, I could probably tell you,
Yeah.
Is there
What
impact
would
fees
it-
that we charge for new
What would it
construction?
cost to do the
Yeah.
study?
we figure we could do both studies for less than 100,000. But I
Both
don't know
studies being the road,
the transportation road. and
Transportation
all that.
and the stormwater.
Yeah.
So the stormwater, I believe, we talked to Zions just roughly, and I think it was somewhere around 50, 60, wasn't it?
I don't remember, I was actually not at that meeting
Yeah.
because I was ill, but.
But it's under the 100,000.
Yeah, we've got another 55,000 this year, so we're sitting at maybe about 160,000.
160.
net. Yeah, and we'll get more, before the end of the year here,
So
on some of that.
let's just say we use it for the study and there's 100,000 left.
Mhm.
What could that 100,000 be used for?
For the projects that
actual
are in the
project.
studies, yeah.
So we want to minimize the study so we have more for the project.
Ideally, yes, but we also need to effectively identify the projects so that we can utilize the fee for them. It's kind of they go together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we're collecting this fee through how? Sorry.
Impact fees through.
Building permits, basically.
Part of our building permit process.
But the stormwater fee would be separate later.
Yeah, this is a stormwater impact fee and a transportation impact fee. The stormwater fee we're talking about is separate, but you still need to base it on, if you will, reality of what you plan to do.
So Tim, are you recommending that we go ahead with the study or the fee and the study both?
Both. So the study first, obviously, but I don't want to do the study and know all the things that we need to get done and accomplish and not implement anything.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend both,
But without-
but it is a process.
But I think what Scott was saying, I agree with. We do the plan, so we can see how much we're
I
talking.
do want,
whether
I
we
do want to know what's out there.
Whether we do a property tax or we do
Yeah,
the fee.
that's
How we
what I
choose
was-
to fund it.
So I agree with what Scott's saying.
Need the study before I can implement the fee because. I
It's
don't
very nice
want-
that there's money in a reserve fund that we can use for that.
Yeah.
And our impact fees are, they're still pretty typically low.
We had a
compared to
we had a
other
stormwater report about 7, 8 years ago, and it was worse than roads. It's like Tally was saying, it's been kicked down the road, and there was some mention of the federal requirements, that if we looked at
Okay,
that and tried to
yes.
meet those, we'd find out that we can't, and no city can. But it's a point where we have some requirements that we're falling way down.
But we could do this and
Yeah.
we can structure it so there's enough to pay for a bond, if we wanted a bond and do a bunch. But that's what this will tell us.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we can move forward on this. You're still gonna have to make that determination probably in 4 months, I don't know, 5 months anyway, not at the time of the budget. We just want direction on if you want us to proceed.
So what I'm hearing then is that we pick the can up off the road, we do the study, then at whatever time.
I mean, honestly, if we've got this reserved money, we could stick it in the budget amendment, they could start looking for doing the study now. It doesn't have to necessarily go in the
Well,
budget.
between now and July, I don't think it's material time, right, but you're right, you could, but I think go ahead and go into this budget using those funds, and we'll whatever amount you say, and then we'll put them into motion. But I think we all know, it's not really.
I'd rather not operate it, honestly, this is, talking to some people that live down in Oak Creek, when Salt Lake City handles their infrastructure failures, when they really old pipes they have in the road, it's like, well, it breaks, we'll go fix it.
Yeah, well. but
When
let's
the water
look at
quits
study.
going down the drain,
It's a
then
lot
we'll
easier to
look
make a
and see
decision
why.
when we have more information, so. You okay with that?
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay, we all right?
Yep.
Telecom fee, it's something we always have in our back pocket. We're one of the few cities don't do it, so we don't- it's not concluded at this time, so.
Do we know if any others, sorry.
What are your creative ways we're gonna find money to do our solar and our charging station?
That's
And our
next.
dog park?
So, this is my opinion on this, and obviously it's a council decision, but I kind of feel like with the potential costs, and we'll have the costs here fairly soon, probably in the next couple of weeks from that study. So we'll really understand where the costs are, at least on the solar here. I kind of feel like we ought to look at that in a future bond with, even if we're looking at if we're looking at a facility, building a facility like Public Works or whatever, we ought to look at combining those together in a bond. That's how I look at it.
You're
So
talking
it's
like
gonna
a geo bond?
possibly a geo bond or sales tax
Geo,
bond's
you have
actually
to
what
go out
I'm.
and Get a vote.
I'm
Sales tax bonds,
talking,
that's
I'm
fine.
talking sales tax.
Yeah.
You're talking just sales tax revenue?
Yeah.
Sales tax scares me because then it's gone. But at least if you do a geo bond, the voters get to say, yeah, that's what we want.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have to, I think there's a way to look at that we can pursue it. I don't think this budget year, but we'll work on some plans to address that. And you know, as we look at some of these other bonds, I don't know, some of our other bonds, we need to look at the amortization on those and see where those are at.
Can our sustainability planner, that 20% of her time, look for creating finance?
Yeah, and that's another thing that I would
I think
hope
that's
that
one
we
of the charges we
pursue.
want to have, because we've got to make some progress. Once we've done the resolution, we can't say, well, we got the resolution, it's great,
I
let's
agree.
find something every year, we've made some progress.
Well, I think just by hiring, if that
That's
planning
good.
person, it can do the other half of their job that way, that's check that box, and then they can do those other things
Yeah,
within
it's
it.
a piece of it, yeah.
Because, you know, I just remember Granite sitting here and offering to help pay for charging stations, or if we could leverage that with that, we've got Rocky Mountain Power, we can, I'd be interested to see that study that we have for the 250 to the 500.
Yeah, it's coming, you know,
And I would ask them to price it out if we were to put the panels in 2022 when the tariffs are off, to see if that saves any costs, because there's a, you know, fairly large
Who
tariff.
builds the panel now?
They come from China, so all the.
I would figure it's probably China, but I
Yeah.
figured I should.
So all
raise
the
that.
tariff prices are
Before I
in there,
accuse the
it
Chinese
might
of
save
something else.
some, you know, 30%, I don't know.
Well, like the charging stations, I think this person could really work on that.
That's what I'd say.
Kinda, yeah.
We just need that capacity to help us work through some of these issues.
As we get this person on board, could we formalize our volunteer sustainability committee, make them a legitimate?
Possibly.
You mean like the PTOS committee? I think the part of the reason for having more committees is that we need more staff to manage them.
That's part of the
And
challenge.
so,
It is, yeah, that's what.
so
we're
that's a
gonna
good
get by.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get that person.
But I think all those things are on the table, and I think by this person and having part of that time, and you've met with the other cities, and there's some interest in collaboration, that just keep moving, yeah.
we might not want to share.
We might not.
Might not.
If we're going, and, yeah,
We'll,
we're
we'll,
good.
s- we'll probably start because they'll contribute some funding towards this, but we may not want to share, I don't know.
Yeah, depends on what they're rolling.
We don't have in the budget, we don't have that as being shared, it's just what I needed.
Not right now, but actually they tentatively agreed we'll work on an interlocal agreement between the three of us that we're gonna bring to you
Oh,
to share.
They
And
each-
we've
yeah,
talked costs
Yeah, they
already.
each put in 6,000 or something like that, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
roughly.
so they-
So 18,000 of that.
Actually, only 12,000.
because we're.
Yeah,
one of those.
Correct, I'm sorry.
I gotta keep on it.
He's got to
That's
keep
right.
on.
Okay.
So no, if they happen to be talented for.
Do we just use water?
Grants, creative ways of funding, I mean, cause I got the charging stations, I mean, I don't have any issue with that, but it's just like, how do we cover that $5,000 to $10,000, what's the best way to do that, that kind of a.
Well, and I also think we have to decide, is this the most appropriate place in our city for a charging station? You know, if we're gonna do something and have somebody help finance it, where is it gonna, what's the best location for it?
Well,
Maybe here it is the best
if you
place,
get-
but
if
somebody-
you get a couple of parents that buy Teslas for their kids, that would be an awesome place.
With the rec centers, it's a.
Right, exactly, the rec center might be better because the people are coming in and
Oh,
out.
with the school and
And
the
the
activities
pickleball,
there.
Which isn't the rec center, which is the
Soccer.
school district, is
Correct.
what's going on.
But we also want to transition code enforcement to an EV vehicle. We want to move our city
Sure.
vehicles. to
But that's
EV.
why this person would be so great to have.
Yeah,
And make them.
And it's gonna be incremental, you know, as we work on this, so.
Okay, so it's 8:30. Again, this is a tentative budget. We'll have a chance to review it again, take it, review it, think about things.
Can I just clarify,
Please.
real quickly, just to make sure I'm on the same page with everyone on here and we have the consensus? So we're looking at keeping the funding for the float, but looking at working
Down to
community.
12, we're cutting it down to
12,000 and working towards more of a community-oriented float in the future and this upcoming year. The newsletter, we're keeping it now, but we're looking at doing a survey and including some funding in for a survey to understand what people's needs are related to that. Am I clear on that? Do we have consensus?
Newsletter to monthly and then.
So keep it in as monthly, we would add it, keep it in as monthly, right now it's not there, keep it in as monthly, but follow that up with a survey that will
Well,
fund
but
as well.
not just a survey, but you've taught, and you've committed that you're gonna evaluate the content and the
Yeah,
formatting.
that's gonna happen no matter what.
Purposing of
It's
it.
distribution I'm talking about only,
Yeah.
how we distribute it, okay? Am I good with that? Are we
In the
good?
tentative budget, we may come
Yes.
back and let them say no.
We're gonna add the 25,000 in the Jordan Canal.
How much did you have in there for the survey?
We're, nothing, but we're gonna add some funding on that. I'm gonna have to look at what the costs are on that, so we'll add that. And then, we're gonna take out the 50,000 on the compensation study. We're gonna add the 5.11% for the fire.
We'll confirm that with fire.
We'll confirm
It's
it, but
not-
we'll add it.
It's not confirmed until.
That seems like that's the high number, so it can
Yeah,
only get better.
that'll be the highest.
And then we're gonna include a
What will be-
stormwater
what will
fee
be those?
study utilizing those funds. Is that's what I heard? That's
Yeah,
what the changes are for the tentative?
yeah.
Got it. We're good with that? Okay.
You said stormwater thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Has there been, I know on the adding that planning person, that we had discussions at our last committee hearings. Will we have 3 of us that are, seems that I'm supportive of that. Are there gonna be 2 other people that will support that line item in the budget, the 60,000
What's that?
for the additional planning person?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think there's enough demand in the planning to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually.
Well, I just
in the
wasn't, I don't know if we'll
Yeah.
get unanimity, but I
Oh.
just wanted to
I'm
make
sorry,
sure
I thought
that there
it
would be
was.
3.
And it's actually a net of 40 because it's the 60 less the 20 from the interns, so the net
'Cause they're
impact is
taking
40.
out.
Right.
But we may add a little bit in related to some funding to help with the compensation study on an intern basis. I heard that too.
Oh, that's right.
Is that okay?
Minimal, yeah.
It'll be minimal, it's
Oh,
not gonna
like
be.
it-
No more than 50,000.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that can be tiresome work sometimes, and you need somebody on the phone or just
But-
digging
but
through all
there's-
the data.
but There's some interns that fits perfectly, yeah, for 1 semester, yeah.
Okay.
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 Well, hey, I would like to say from my own perspective, thank you. I mean, this was, I thought, very well done, and pieces were connected, and I didn't sort of forget what we talked about 2 months ago. It's been building off of what you've previously shared with us. So for me, I really appreciate what you've done. It's been a really fun process.
Ditto.
Budgets and fun?
You are, right?
Scott's done a great job.
Yeah, you really
No,
have.
it's a team effort.
And I appreciate the councils. I know it's hard to get to those other meetings, but I think giving the staff a chance to present, review, and critique, and back and forth, I think it just.
It's
helps
truly
things.
invaluable, because not knowing what you guys want and coming to this meeting without that, it wouldn't be this.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I like that you pulled out the, from our planning session, what we
Yeah.
talked about, and what our goals were, and trying to tie in.
Yeah, and hopefully everybody has a copy of that, because I know that's what I'm using too, and when we meet, we talk about it. It's a good little thing. Hopefully next year we review this and do it again.
I'd like to do it every year. Our executive staff, we talk about it too. We
We
talked
do.
about it this week, said our administrative direction plan, make sure you're looking at your goals and working towards them.
Okay, we still have one more item, so we need to.
Closed session or something else?
Yes.
Okay.
we have- but before moving to closed session, you have the calendar in front of you. We have, I guess, is it tomorrow or is it next week? April 18th is the roundabout.
That's just the EIS, isn't it?
I'm confused with
It's,
water.
no, it's the environmental, it's the EIS.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done design.
Because we were not
It's
gonna
not
do it, and all of a
design.
sudden we had to do that. So it's not design, which everybody's really anxious to wait for
That's
the
the
design
design.
question. So this is just meeting a
In-
responsibility.
For federal funding, environmental, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, so that's April 18th. Then Friday night at the rec center, it's Teen Easter Party, is that on the ice?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there's free skating from 7 to 8:30. At 8:30, they're gonna clear the ice.
They throw some.
Everybody
candy.
takes off their skates,
We'll go
and
back.
then the youth council will be distributing candy on the ice, have the kids get on all the way around.
Is it
and
Easter
scramble.
this weekend?
Yeah. And then,
Then.
you guys be at the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, so.
I would say no later than 9:45.
Yeah,
Earlier if you want a parking spot.
everybody's been there last year, I think it's.
Because if you show up at 10:02, you'll miss it.
Yeah.
daughter's soccer game, I might be there at 10.
Then we have, Butler Middle School has a concert on the 22nd. Then our business association has a superhero bike ride, May 17th. And we've got some other things there you can look at as far as your schedule. Okay?
We moved the play way before the Butlerville days this year.
All right,
We'll see how that goes.
with that, we have a closed session. We have two items. One, well, Shane, help me out. One, we're talking about personnel. And the other, we're talking about, do I call it pending litigation or not call it pending litigation?
I think you can.
Okay. So we need a motion to go out of our open meeting into a closed meeting to talk about personnel and pending litigation.
We're all looking at you still.
Scott, we're looking at you.
Well, I can't see.
You just have to say it.
I move that we close the open closed session for the discussion of litigation and the professional competence or character of an individual.
Oh, I like that. That's what I'm supposed to do. Okay, do you have a second?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm closed.
When you say yes, when you say aye?
You know, we go.
Depends on what
if
you're
in a
rushing.
meeting, if you go down and look at the line, like COZ, one will say no, one will say no.
Okay.
We'll start laughing.
Okay.
I need to stop the stream here and get out of here.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yay.